BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just one quick announcement before we begin. A big thank you to everybody who checked out our new introduction music that we will hopefully be using in the near future. This channel is going through some evolutionary phases, and later this month we are going to be doing episodes 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they will hopefully be a little bit longer, 40 minutes to an hour. You guys gave some excellent feedback on the new introduction, and some things will be modified, and it will be coming out in a different way once we start the relaunching of the show. But today we are continuing with our book discussion on The Myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horan, which explores the Zodiac hoax theory, the idea that in 1969 somebody was writing letters and mailing in cryptograms, taking credit for murders that he did not commit. This individual has been identified as Harold K. Snook, also known as Hal Snook, and really it's just the letters prior to November 9th of 1969, and then everything after that could have been material that someone had learned about from the newspapers. So you'll see that this is listed as part 7. And if you haven't heard the previous segments, you can keep listening. We're just going to talk about the Zodiac Killer and the Zodiac hoax theory. But if you're following along with the playlist, once again, being 100% clear, you should see part 5. Then part 6 is just called Challenges to the Zodiac hoax theory. And then part 7. Part 6 does not have a number on it. Once again, just Challenges to the Zodiac hoax theory will be counted as part 6. So I listened to Thomas Henry Horan's show, the Stones Unturned podcast, and I hadn't been following it recently, but I picked up an episode, and it had something in there that I thought was a better challenge to any of the claims in the Zodiac hoax theory than what we put forward in that part 6 segment, in our challenges to the Zodiac hoax segment. I think he provided a better rebuttal or a better piece of skeptical criticism about the Zodiac hoax theory than anything from the sources that I was citing or my own observations. And what I would like to do right now is I would like to play that clip from his show. It's about a minute long. Let's just listen to him in his own words talking about the Zodiac Killer and his theory, and let's respond to it.
The victims are supposed to be random. I forgot about this detail. In Zodiac, it's supposed to be randomly chosen victims, and that turns out probably not to be true. David Faraday and Betty Lee Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Mike Mageau, probably shot by the same, if not the same guy, definitely the same little gang of drug dealers. There was this guy who, a little bit older, like 20s, and he had all these teenagers stealing stuff. See, if you're under 18, you're a juvenile offender, so they would commit these burglaries. So you have Mike Mageau, who's 17, and he had been a juvenile offender. He's dressed like a burglar, right? You wear several layers of clothes so that when you run around the corner, you take off a layer of clothes and your description is totally changed. It's standard operating procedure. Trading stolen radios, TVs, trading them for drugs, not paying cash, and then he fences the stuff for cash, and then he buys drugs from his buddies in the Hells Angels. And this looks like the MO of both of those murders. Where does Paul Stein fit into any of all this? But it turns out the victims really aren't all that random. And then you have, I forgot.
And let's respond to that, shall we? The first point that I noted there was that this is perhaps the first time I've heard him say that he believed that Lake Herman Road, the murders on December 20th of 1968, could have actually been committed by the same person as the murders at Blue Rock Springs Park on July 4th of 1969. Really, it's the murder of Darlene Ferrin and the shooting of Mike Mageau. Being clear, Mike Mageau went on to survive that incident. And you even heard him say that Paul Stein, how does he fit into there? Now, this is going to be one thing when I am going to admit to you, I'm going to be trolling. And what you're about to hear, purely trolling. And why do I say that? Well, I'll answer in a second. But the big response is, if you believe that the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs could be committed by the same perpetrator, and then the Paul Stein shooting in Presidio Heights on October 11th doesn't fit into the theory anymore, well then what is the basis for the hoax theory? Doesn't that instead suggest that there was a single perpetrator who committed all of these crimes? Hasn't the equation entirely been changed? Well, I said I was trolling, right? No, that's something that I definitely thought about when I was listening to the episode. And the reason he said I forget at the end, he changes the subject. That is the end of that little segment there about Darlene Ferrin and Mike Mageau. Now, if I understand, though, this individual that he said that was hiring these teenagers to commit the burglaries, including Mike Mageau, if I understand and follow his narrative, that was an individual named Donald Warren Porter, and we can say something about him in a second, but when I said I was trolling, in all fairness to Thomas Henry Horn, he says that he will reveal 3 new claims about the Zodiac Killer in the near future, and that is that he has a solution to the 340 cipher. That's number 1. The second one is that he has a solution to the map code. And the third one is that he has a new suspect in the murder of Paul Stein and that he will share this info in the near future. I haven't heard his solution to the 340 cipher, but if I can follow his narrative, it's that the reason why people cannot solve the 340 cipher is because it is written in 3 different languages: English, Japanese, and Tagalog from the Philippines. But I just wanted to be clear. He does say that he will explain how the Paul Stein murder fits into his theory later on, but you heard it there. There could be the same shooter at Lake Herman Road as Blue Rock Springs. And when I said Donald Warren Porter, somebody once wrote into the channel, and they shared something with me saying that the only person who has ever been arrested for one of the Zodiac murders was an individual named Donald Warren Porter, after the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 1969, in between Blue Rock Springs and Lake Berryessa, we should say. And because I've been reading the book The Myth of the Zodiac Killer and following Thomas Henry Horn's show, I was like, now wait a second. Was that really Donald Warren Porter? I think that that was the famous Donald something. His name is Donald, but he is Donald something. And I'm sure that it's posted on the internet somewhere that that individual was Donald Warren Porter. But this is the stuff that Evan from Texas really gets into, that they are actually different people. Because even from talking to Thomas Henry Horn myself, he was the first person to tell me that after the murder of Darlene Ferrin at Blue Rock Springs Park, there were 2 individuals that were arrested, and that was James Flowers and Donald something. His name has not been revealed to the public. I might even be able to tell you his last name, but he apparently does not want it revealed, so he can be Donald blank or Donald something. And that it was heavily discussed by people for a while, such as Tom Voigt and Michael Butterfield, that this was the same guy, that this guy, Donald Warren Porter, was arrested, and then it turned out that he wasn't, they didn't find anything credible about him, and then he was released, and then he skipped town. Okay, except for the fact that that was most likely not Donald Warren Porter. That was a different individual. And if Evan from Texas, if you ever listened to this episode, I had no idea that Evan from Texas was so influential in some of these things, that not only was he the person who discovered this Donald something connection or learned about this individual, he was the first person to do that. He was also the one who obtained Hal Snook's military records, including Hal Snook's DD-214. So Evan from Texas has been doing a lot of the research that Thomas Henry Horn talks about. The next thing that we should say is, this is also one of the reasons why Thomas Horn believes that Jim Phillips Crabtree and Donald Warren Porter were at the park the night that Darlene Ferrin was murdered. I'm not 100% sure of that. I don't even really know where to begin with that, because I think so much of that relies on speculation, perhaps, but as we said, the 2 individuals that were picked up were James Flowers and Donald something, Donald blank, and then Donald something apparently turns to James Flowers and says, I'm going to be charged with murder, I'm going to be booked for murder, something to that effect, and he was the guy that they looked into and they determined, okay, this guy wasn't the shooter, and then they let him go, and then he skipped town. So that's the way that that narrative follows. Was he the real shooter? I really have no idea. Was Donald Warren Porter the real shooter at Blue Rock Springs Park on July 4th of 1969? I'm not sure, but I would like to hear your response. If somebody is going to be promoting this Zodiac hoax theory, and they're going to say that there is a connection between Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, does that not go against the Zodiac hoax theory at all? I mean, what really is the basis of the theory then? Because then you would have somebody writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit just for Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. Okay, well, that was the same guy. That was the same shooter. Well, I mean, that doesn't sound like much of a hoax. That just sounds like some individual is ripping off this other murderer, and there actually is a murderer out there, and just someone else is writing letters taking credit for this person's behavior. I mean, is he talking about Donald Warren Porter there? I'm not even 100% sure. Okay, we've said some critical things about Thomas Henry Horn there. Now let's say some complimentary things about some of the chapters that we've been going through in the myth of the Zodiac Killer, because there have been a lot of short ones that have pushed together up to chapter 13 in the book. And we can talk about the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, because I think that this is a very good time to mention the fact that Thomas Horan has offered another very major criticism of Robert Graysmith, and that's that Graysmith is trying to link together all these murders by saying that the police had no good suspects in them, the police have no idea who could have possibly committed these murders. They're just these baffling, unsolved crimes created by this cold, methodical, and calculating mastermind known as the Zodiac. And that also includes the murder of Cheri Jo Bates on October 30th of 1966. Many people believe that there is some way, somehow, some type of Zodiac killer connection to Cheri Jo Bates. The first thing I would say is that Thomas Horn seems extremely dismissive of that because, I mean, we can't forget that there were letters mailed in that says Bates had to die, there will be more, and they're signed with something that appears to be the letter Z. It could have a different type of meaning. It could have a different set of anything. But I have to reinstate one of my own claims about the Zodiac Killer, that I'm almost certain that the letter Z was chosen first, and that whoever committed any of the murders, or I should say, whoever wrote the Zodiac Killer letters, chose the letter Z first and then decided to add in the word Zodiac later for a whole host of other issues that we can talk about in some future episodes. But with the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, absolutely there are other suspects in this case. And the reason why I think that Thomas Henry Horn's criticism of Robert Graysmith is very valuable is because in early 2019, I was talking a lot about four major Zodiac killer suspects: Richard Gaikowski, Arthur Lee Allen, Lawrence Kane, and Ross Sullivan. And I really looked at Ross Sullivan as the prime suspect in the murder of Cheri Jo Bates. I was even going down the pathway that he murdered Cheri Jo Bates, and the reason why was because I was only following that particular narrative. And then the more I began to learn about the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, I saw that there actually are other suspects, and there actually are other people that the police were genuinely looking at. And the former lover of Cheri Jo Bates, who really went on to become a prime suspect, was looked at by the police for years. And if I understand Thomas Henry Horan's exact claim about the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, it is that there could have been multiple attackers. And the reason why that there isn't this exact type of connection is because she may have been murdered by two people, and there's some conflicting evidence, or there's some type of tainted evidence, or it's not all coming from one person. But what we really should note is that there is an enormous amount of physical evidence that has come after the murder of Cheri Jo Bates. Hair was pulled out. There's that Timex watch that was snapped in half, let alone how vicious and grisly that crime was. There's going to be evidence that is going on all up and down the spectrum. I mean, Cheri Jo Bates was stabbed 42 times, and I mean, she was slashed across the face and the throat, and you got to know, in such a harsh struggle, as we said, pulling hair out. I mean, she's going to be scraping at the killer's skin. There's going to be all types of physical evidence that should connect a perpetrator to this. Now, it appears that they really have looked at the former lover of Cheri Jo Bates, but they just were not able to make a conviction. But that's, even if you don't think that he did it, and you do think that it was Ross Sullivan, the point is there are multiple suspects. And when we look at the other crimes like Lake Herman Road or Blue Rock Springs or Lake Berryessa, think about what we just said about Blue Rock Springs, Jim Phillips Crabtree or Donald Warren Porter. And the first time I ever heard an interview with Thomas Henry Horn, he even talked about how he believed that Blue Rock Springs was a sting operation, and that Darlene Ferrin was perhaps a confidential informant for the narcotics division, and she was trying to set up her ex-husband, Jim Phillips Crabtree. I almost said Donald Warren Porter. No, excuse me, I misspoke. She was trying to set up her ex-husband, Jim Phillips Crabtree, and the sting operation backfired. Maybe that's another reason why Richard Hoffman was patrolling the park so early, just prior to the murder of Darlene Ferrin. And perhaps somebody caught on, and they decided to murder Darlene Ferrin. For a very long time, Thomas Henry Horn talked about how he believed that Jim Phillips Crabtree was the shooter at Blue Rock Springs Park. But even when I was reading The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax for the first time, I noticed that Jim Phillips Crabtree is cited as one of the sources for the material talking about his own standpoint. And other people have talked about this on forums. They're saying that Jim Phillips Crabtree is someone who is accessible. He is very open to talking about the Zodiac Killer mystery and the murder of Darlene Ferrin. He's open to talking about Darlene Ferrin. He certainly isn't trying to hide away from things or to shy away from the questions. And someone even pointed out in the comments section that Richard Hoffman seems so uneasy and nervous when he is questioned about this, and that this is the Zodiac speaking documentary. And he seems like he really just seems completely uncomfortable about going down the pathway that he had any association with Darlene Ferrin. And you have Robert Graysmith writing about Richard Hoffman, saying that he attended Darlene Ferrin's painting party. And then I was really quite surprised when Thomas Henry Horn is saying that if he went back and found the statements from Darlene Ferrin's husband, Dean Ferrin, saying that the painting party just simply did not happen. It was a fiction that was created by Robert Graysmith. But why would Richard Hoffman be included? Was he the shooter, or was this indeed a sting operation in which Darlene Ferrin was trying to set up Jim Phillips Crabtree, or perhaps set up somebody else? Or was the police just trying to arrest Donald Warren Porter? As far as Donald Warren Porter being the Zodiac Killer, I understand that he was 6 feet 7 inches tall, so he would certainly not match any of the witness descriptions in the other crimes, Lake Berryessa and the Paulstein murder in Presidio Heights. Both the descriptions that we talked about in parts 5 and 6 of the shooter in the Paulstein murder in Presidio Heights was of an individual that was placed around 5 feet 8 inches tall. Thomas Henry Horn's main dispute with Robert Graysmith in that one is that Horan says that the shooter after the Paulstein murder in Presidio Heights was 25 to 30 years old, whereas Graysmith wrote that he was someone around 40 years old. What did we say? What was the exact phrasing? Early 40s. And if anything, I thought that more or less suggested Hal Snook could be the perpetrator in the Paulstein shooting. And if I can just be honest with you, I thought that was such a more convincing angle on it, that Hal Snook committed one of the murders, that you would have this guy writing letters, taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. To him, that was probably a criminal masterpiece. That was probably the greatest thing that he would have ever concocted, if he did write the letters, which I'm not 100% certain of, because I don't think I've ever heard anything 100% to verify that Hal Snook wrote the letters or committed any murder. The challenges to that is that, maybe if we could extract some DNA from the letters, or we could somehow get some type of fingerprints on the letters that would match to this guy, Hal Snook, then we could say that definitively he was the person who wrote the Zodiac Killer letters prior to 1969. And in the Zodiac hoax theory, we should always remember that a different person is accused of writing the cryptograms and writing the ciphers. Thomas Henry Horn has accused Robert Graysmith, but I think that I'm not sure if he's stepping away from that claim that Graysmith wrote the ciphers, or that he simply is saying that he doesn't know right now. I haven't heard him talk about it recently. I have to tell you that is a really far-fetched theory. It's not saying that it's 100% wrong. Maybe it actually is right. I only very loosely believe that Graysmith would have included his name in the final 18 characters at the bottom of the 408 cipher, and that's actually the solution as Robert Smith II. I think that's highly unlikely. But the big point is, number one, we said we would say something very complimentary, and that is, I can accept that there are other suspects in these murders other than the Zodiac Killer, especially with the murder of Cheri Jo Bates. And if you are going to say that Cheri Jo Bates was a genuine Zodiac Killer victim, why didn't the Zodiac Killer include her name on the car door at Lake Berryessa, September 27th of 1969, writing the dates of Zodiac activity, saying that Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, and Lake Berryessa. There are 3 dates included. If Cheri Jo Bates was indeed a Zodiac Killer victim, why was she not included? Was the Zodiac Killer just a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic and then is just in these different types of personality modes? Or is something else going on? Or was she not indeed a Zodiac Killer victim? But we can say with certain fact, Cheri Jo Bates's date of death was not included on the car door at Lake Berryessa after the stabbing of Cecilia Ann Shepard and Brian Hartnell. So that leads us to the next point that I just have to say, though, if we're going to say some things that are complimentary, the second point is the descriptions of the individual at Lake Berryessa seem quite contrary to the descriptions of the person after the Paulstein murder. And it's possible that either that Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell just got it wrong about the physical descriptions, that the costume was disguising the person's shape, and that that the killer also, the big thing I wanted to say is the killer at Lake Berryessa, if he indeed murdered Paul Stein as well, he could have been sporting a very different type of haircut, a very different type of facial hair. We're talking like something like a mustache, maybe a light beard or something like that. Something that you wouldn't recognize from 25 to 50 meters away, but up close, someone had a distinguishing facial characteristics, something that they did not want people to recognize in between September 27th with the murder of Cecilia Shepard and October 11th with the murder of Paul Stein. And I have to confess that we explored this more in the Robert Linkletter connection because it's talking about how the Zodiac would, it's a claim that somebody is making about the Zodiac killer and their theory, saying that the Zodiac most likely altered his facial hair in between the different crimes, and that was one of the reasons why witness descriptions wouldn't match up to the person that people would be thinking about, because somebody is altering their appearance very frequently in 1969. And we have to remember that there are descriptions that were put forward by Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Ann Shepard that the perpetrator at Lake Berryessa had long hair that was coming down behind the sunglasses. Someone maybe had a haircut, got a shave, and altered their appearance in some way. Is there any possibility that that's going on? But I think that's where we're going to have to leave it at for now. And the real challenge question that I would like you to respond to is that what do you have to say about the claim that if there is the same shooter at Lake Herman Road as is Blue Rock Springs, what does that do for the Zodiac killer hoax theory? Is that even a hoax, or is that just something else? I mean, that sounds like someone else is not taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. Someone is taking credit for murders that he didn't commit, but there's someone else's murders that's like you're just following along with a different murderer. It's almost just like being a scribe or a scrivener and just writing down someone else's wrongdoings. And we're talking about a single individual murdering the victims at Blue Rock Springs and Lake Herman Road. How do you think that changes the equation? I would love to hear your responses to that question in the comments section below. That's all for me now. See you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.